She looked like any other child on the plane. She had a small pink backpack. She wore a yellow t-shirt with a smiley face on it. Her sneakers had little lights in the heels. She was sitting in seat 12F, next to the window. Her legs were too short to touch the floor, so they just swung back and forth slowly. She had a juice box in one hand and a comic book in the other. Her name was Emma. She was 12 years old. And she was completely alone on the flight. The flight attendant, Jessica, checked on her every few minutes. "Are you okay, sweetie?" Emma always smiled and said she was fine. She looked nervous, like any child flying alone for the first time. The man in seat 12E smiled at her. "Is this your first time flying alone?" "Yes, sir," Emma said quietly. She was lying. It was actually her 100th flight. But nobody on that plane could ever know that. The old woman in seat 12D gave Emma some cookies. "You are such a brave little girl," she said. Emma smiled and said thank you. She looked exactly like what everyone thought she was, a normal 12-year-old kid traveling alone to meet her dad in Dallas. Nobody had any idea who Emma really was. At just 12 years old, Emma Martinez was the youngest military test pilot in the history of the United States Air Force. Her call sign was Sky. Only a very small group of people in the entire country knew that name: generals, scientists, and a few test pilots. Her secret was protected at the highest level of the government. Emma had started flying when she was 9 years old. It happened almost by accident. Her father worked as a mechanic at an Air Force base. One day, he brought her to work. Emma wandered into a large hangar and found a small experimental aircraft sitting there. She climbed into the cockpit. The engineers found her sitting there, perfectly calm, studying the instruments. "She fits perfectly," one of them whispered. It was true. The cockpit had been built for a very small pilot. No adult could sit in it comfortably. But Emma fit like she was made for it. That one moment changed everything. The Air Force ran tests on Emma. Scientists studied her reflexes and her ability to stay calm under pressure. Her reaction time was 40% faster than the average adult. She could process flight information faster than most trained pilots. Within 6 months, she was in a simulator. She flew it perfectly on the very first try. Most adult pilots take weeks to learn what Emma learned in a single day. By age 9, she was flying real aircraft. By age 10, she had more flight hours than most military pilots achieve in their entire careers. Her parents did not know the full truth. They thought Emma went to a special school for gifted children. They had no idea their daughter was flying jets that did not officially exist. Emma carried this secret every single day. She kept her life split perfectly in two: a normal 12-year-old girl on the outside, and one of America's most valuable pilots on the inside. And on this day, she was just a kid in seat 12F, reading a comic book and drinking a juice box. Everything changed at 2:15 in the afternoon. Flight 847 was cruising at 35,000 feet over New Mexico. The sky was clear. The flight was smooth. Most of the 142 passengers were relaxed. The flight from Phoenix to Dallas was supposed to be simple and quiet. Captain Robert Hayes had been flying commercial planes for 15 years. But he had never seen anything like what happened next. He felt something strange. A vibration. Not the normal kind from air bumps. Something deeper. Something wrong. "Lisa," he said to his co-pilot, Lisa Chen. "Do you feel that?" She felt it too. Then the warning lights started. Engine 2 was showing red. Then Engine 1. Both engines. At the same time. Red lights everywhere. Alarms beeping loudly. "Check the fuel systems," Hayes ordered. "Fuel is fine," Chen said, her voice shaking. Pressure is normal. This is a mechanical failure. Both engines. A dual-engine failure. Both engines failing at once. It almost never happened. It was every pilot's worst nightmare. And it was happening now, at 35,000 feet, with 142 people on board. Dallas Center, this is United 847, Hayes said into his radio. We are declaring an emergency. Both engines are failing. We need immediate help. Passengers started to notice. The plane was tilting forward. The engine sounds were weaker. Fear spread through the cabin fast. A woman in the back started crying. The businessman next to Emma grabbed his armrests tightly. Emma sat very still in seat 12F. She looked calm from the outside. But inside, her trained mind had already started calculating. She knew exactly what was happening. She recognized every warning sign. She knew their altitude, their descent rate, and how much time they had. The numbers were bad. Without engine power, they had maybe 15 minutes. Dallas was too far. They needed a closer airport, and they needed to reach it with no engine power at all. Every part of her training was telling her to act. She knew exactly what the pilots needed to do. But she heard her commanding officer's words clearly in her head. Never break your cover. No matter what happens. Your secret protects national security. Emma looked around the cabin. The old woman who had given her cookies. The businessman who had smiled at her. The mother across the aisle with a daughter Emma's age. 142 people. Emma closed her eyes for a moment. Then she made her decision. At NORAD headquarters, a young analyst named Marcus was checking the passenger list, standard procedure when a commercial plane declared an emergency over military airspace. Most passengers were normal travelers. Then he reached seat 12F. Emma Martinez. Age 12. He ran the name through the civilian database. Nothing unusual. Just a kid traveling alone. But Marcus always ran names through the classified database too. He stopped breathing. He read the screen 3 times. Then ran the search again. Same result. Every time, the same impossible answer. Colonel, Marcus said slowly. You need to come see this. Colonel James Mitchell walked over and read the screen. Seat 12F. Emma Martinez. Age 12. Active Air Force pilot. Call sign, Sky. Assigned to Project Phoenix. Security clearance, top secret, special access program. This has to be a database error, Mitchell said. I ran it 6 times, sir. Mitchell read the full record. Flight hours, 847. Aircraft types qualified, 23. Security clearance higher than most generals in the building. He picked up the phone. Get me a secure line to Area 51. Right now. The call confirmed everything. Emma was real. She was 12. She was a test pilot. And she was on a plane about to go down. Mitchell made a decision that broke every protocol in the book. Get me radio contact with those F-22s. Tell them we need to speak with Sky. Immediately. 2 F-22 Raptor jets had already been scrambled from Holloman Air Force Base. Major Ryan Thompson and Captain Jennifer Rodriguez reached Flight 847 and flew alongside it. What they saw was not routine. The plane was descending too fast. No vapor trails from the engines. The aircraft was not flying, it was gliding. Completely dead in the air. Viper, Thompson said quietly. That plane has no engine power at all. They're not going to make it to Dallas, Rodriguez replied. There was nothing they could do. F-22s cannot push a Boeing 737. All they could do was watch. Then the order came from NORAD. Raptor flight, we have a passenger on board United 847, call sign Sky. Make contact immediately. Back on Flight 847, Captain Hayes heard the same transmission. United 847, this is Raptor 1. We need to speak with Sky immediately. Hayes and Chen stared at each other. In seat 12F, Emma felt like everything had stopped. Her call sign. On the open radio. Her cover was gone. The businessman next to her turned and stared. Did they just call you Sky? Hayes's voice came over the intercom. Would passenger Emma Martinez please come to the cockpit immediately? Every head in the cabin turned toward seat 12F. Emma unbuckled her seat belt. She walked to the front of the plane, passing row after row of confused, frightened faces. She knocked on the cockpit door. Hayes opened it and looked down at her. She came up to his chest. Smiley face shirt. Sneakers with flashing lights. Are you Emma Martinez? He asked. Yes, sir. And your call sign is Sky? Yes, sir. That's my call sign. Chen turned around in her seat. You're just a child. Yes, ma'am. I'm 12. Hayes looked at this tiny girl, then looked at his instrument panel. Both engines dead. Altitude dropping at 800 feet per minute. Dallas was impossible. He had no other options. He stepped aside and let her in. Emma took the radio headset. When she spoke, her voice changed completely. No longer soft and shy. Calm, clear, and professional. The voice of a pilot. Raptor 1, this is Sky. What do you need? A short pause. Then Major Thompson's voice came back. Sky, this is Raptor 1. Ma'am, we are ready to assist. What do you need from us? Ma'am. Two of the most elite fighter pilots in the Air Force, combat veterans in the world's most advanced jets, had just called a 12-year-old girl ma'am. Hayes and Chen looked at each other with wide eyes. Emma was already scanning the panel. What is our altitude? She asked Hayes. 21,000 feet and dropping fast. Distance to Holloman Air Force Base? 15 miles. Emma did the calculation instantly. We can make it to Holloman, she said. But we need to fly this plane like a glider. No engines means everything changes. The techniques you trained for assume some engine power. We have none. Hayes looked at her. She was 12 years old. But she spoke like someone who had done this before. Roger, Sky. We have you covered. What happened next had never occurred in aviation history. A 12-year-old girl was guiding two adult pilots through a dead-stick landing of a Boeing 737, escorted by two F-22 Raptors. Emma's instructions were clear and simple. Keep the nose at exactly 7 degrees down. Speed at exactly 145 knots on final approach. Descent rate exactly 650 feet per minute. How do you know all of this? Chen asked. I've practiced it hundreds of times, Emma said. In aircraft with no engines, no hydraulics, no power at all. This is not the hardest situation I have been in. In their F-22s, Thompson and Rodriguez watched in silence. Viper, Thompson said quietly. That kid is flying that plane better than most pilots fly with full power. They descended through 5,000 feet. Holloman Air Force Base was visible ahead. Emergency vehicles lined both sides of the runway, fire trucks, ambulances, rescue teams. At 500 feet, Emma's voice was steady. Keep our speed steady. Just control the nose angle and the rudder. Hayes's hands were shaking slightly. Emma's were not. Then at 300 feet, a strong crosswind pushed the nose left. Hayes started to overcorrect. Small correction, Emma said instantly. Don't fight it. Small rudder input only. Hayes relaxed his hands and made a tiny, gentle correction. The plane straightened out. Good. Hold it steady. 100 feet. 50 feet. Flare now. Pull back gently. Smooth. Hayes raised the nose slowly. The descent slowed. The ground came up. The Boeing 737 touched down hard. The tires hit the runway with a loud thump. But Hayes kept it straight. He braked carefully. The plane slowed and came to a complete stop. Nobody was hurt. Not a single person. For a moment, there was complete silence inside the aircraft. Then 142 passengers exploded into cheering, crying, and clapping all at once. Jessica was laughing and crying at the same time. The old woman was hugging the stranger beside her. The businessman sat with his face in his hands, shaking. Captain Hayes covered his face. His shoulders shook. Chen pressed her hand to her mouth and closed her eyes. Emma stood quietly between them, still holding the radio headset. Outside, the two F-22 Raptors flew over the runway in a low pass. Inside his cockpit, Major Thompson let go of the controls. He sat up straight. He raised his right hand to his forehead in a perfect military salute and held it as he flew over the stopped aircraft. In the second F-22, Captain Rodriguez did exactly the same. Both pilots held their salutes as they passed over Flight 847. This had never happened before. F-22 pilots do not salute from their cockpits. It is against regulations. But both of them did it without hesitation and without any discussion. "Sky, this is Raptor 1, Thompson said. His voice was thick with feeling. That was the most extraordinary flying we have ever witnessed. You saved 142 lives. It was an honor." Emma looked out the cockpit window at the two jets passing overhead. "Thank you, Raptor 1, she said. Her voice was soft again. Small. Like a 12-year-old. I was just doing my job. Thompson smiled inside his helmet. Just doing her job. He had flown in combat for 14 years. And he had just watched a child with flashing sneakers save a full commercial aircraft using techniques he had never been taught. Raptor 2 to Raptor 1, Rodriguez said on their private channel. Did we just salute a 12-year-old? We did, Thompson replied. And I would do it again. Within hours, Emma's secret was gone. The story spread across the world. Every news channel and every website was reporting the same thing. Headlines read, Kid pilot saves 142 lives. 12-year-old secret test pilot revealed. The girl called Sky. The Air Force called Emma in immediately. What you did saved 142 lives, General Martinez told her. But your identity being known creates serious problems. I understand, General, Emma said. But I could not let those people die to keep my secret. The general looked at her for a long moment. Then nodded. No. You could not. And you made the right choice. 2 weeks later, Emma was offered a new assignment. She would become the youngest aviation safety instructor in history, teaching her emergency techniques to commercial pilots across the country. Emma accepted without hesitating. 6 months later, she stood at the front of a classroom full of veteran pilots, captains with gray hair and 30 years of experience. She had to stand on a small platform to reach the whiteboard. The pilots looked at her with polite but skeptical faces. Emma picked up a marker and began to teach. Within an hour, the skepticism was gone. These experienced pilots were learning things they had never known. Things that no manual had ever taught them. One captain raised his hand. How do you stay so calm when everything is failing? Emma thought for a moment. When you fly aircraft that break all the time, she said, you stop being surprised when things go wrong. You just start solving the problem. Panic does not help. So you learn not to panic. The captain nodded slowly. Within 1 year, pilots using Emma's techniques had successfully landed 5 aircraft that would otherwise have crashed. Her methods were added to training programs in dozens of countries. Her emergency procedures manual became required reading for commercial pilots worldwide. In her office, Emma keeps one photograph on the wall. Not a medal ceremony. Not a cockpit photo. It is a photo of a small girl in seat 12F. Yellow smiley face shirt. Sneakers with flashing lights. A juice box in one hand, a comic book in the other. Legs too short to reach the floor, swinging slowly. She looks like any other kid on a plane. That photograph reminds her every single day that extraordinary things can hide inside the most ordinary appearances. And that sometimes, the most important person in the room is the one nobody is looking at. She was just a kid in seat 12F. Until the F-22 pilot stood at attention, and the whole world found out who she really was. 2 years after Flight 847, Emma received the Congressional Gold Medal, the highest civilian honor in the United States. She was 14 years old at the ceremony. She stood at the podium in her dress uniform, still small enough that she had to lean slightly toward the microphone. The most important thing I have ever learned, she told the audience, is that when people need help, your age does not matter. Your size does not matter. What matters is that you have the ability to help, and you choose to use it. The room was silent for a moment. Then the applause began, slow at first, then loud and long. Captain Hayes was sitting in the front row. He stood up and clapped. Chen stood next to him. Major Thompson and Captain Rodriguez were there too, in their dress uniforms, sitting straight and tall. When Emma walked off the stage, Thompson stepped forward. He looked down at her, this small 14-year-old girl in her uniform, and extended his hand. "It is still an honor, Sky," he said. Emma shook his hand and smiled. "Thank you for flying with me, Raptor 1. Rodriguez leaned in. "You know, I have told that story 100 times. Nobody ever believes me at first." "What do you tell them?" Emma asked. "I tell them the truth," Rodriguez said. "That the best pilot I ever flew with had flashing lights in her sneakers." Emma laughed. It was the laugh of a normal teenager, bright and easy. The kind of laugh you would hear on a school playground, not in a military ceremony. That was the thing about Emma that people always found hardest to believe. She was not serious all the time. She was not stiff or robotic. She was a real kid who liked comic books and juice boxes and funny jokes. The extraordinary skill lived quietly inside a completely ordinary person. And that, more than anything, was the lesson her story taught the world. Heroes do not always look the way we expect them to look. They do not always stand tall or speak loudly or wear their abilities on the outside. Sometimes they sit quietly in window seats with their legs swinging above the floor, reading comic books, waiting for the moment when the world needs them. Emma Martinez was just a kid in seat 12F. Until she was not. And when the F-22 pilots raised their hands in salute over that runway in New Mexico, they were not just saluting a pilot. They were saluting every quiet, overlooked, underestimated person who ever kept their strength hidden, and chose to use it when it mattered most.